Greetings, brethren. It is I, the donkey, and we are once again back with Donkey versus Beer. And today we are going to have Mühlen Kölsch. Now, I talked about Kölsch in my German Beer Week video, and I shall put the link up there. It's one of the videos that was viewed the least, which is sad. So maybe you go back and you check it out, because it's actually quite interesting the different histories of various types of beer in Germany. This one being similar looking to a lager, but it is not a lager because this is a top fermentation beer. So it doesn't use the lager yeast, which sort of ferments up from the bottom. This ferments down from the top. Also, this comes in a really funky looking bottle, which I hate, because it means I'm going to have to carry it back to the store that I bought it at, and that's always awful. I prefer when they're just sort of standard bottles, because then I can just bring them anywhere, and that's fine. Anyway, let's crack it open. It does smell very Kölschi, so I'm not getting anything specific. It is how do I describe that trademark Kölsch smell? Almost a bit sort of like clay. It's really sort of earthy. But yeah, it doesn't really smell like most other beers. It has the yeast just smells very different. So yeah, I think clay is probably the closest I can get. I'm always very, very worried about trying to get a good head on these small pint glasses, because as you can see, it is filled to the top, and I have to be very careful now not to spill any bit. If there happens to be someone from Cologne watching these, I do not own a Kölsch glass, and I'm not gonna buy a Kölsch glass, because there's like 4 different kinds of Kölsch I can get, and I'm not that much of a Kölsch drinker anyway, so I'm not gonna get a special one. I don't have a special Pilsner glass either, so deal with it. We're just gonna go with a half pint glass, and that'll be that. And I'm just gonna go straight in and have a go. It's not too much unlike the Gaffel Kölsch, which was the one I tried in the German Beer Week. It's very Kölschi. It's what I associate the most with this kind of beer. Also, you can see the color. Again, I still don't have the backlight. It's very, very, very bright. It's a very pale yellow. It's not a particularly dark beer. I'm sure if I had a Kölsch glass, I could get a good head on it, because you kind of need it. A Kölsch glass is basically really long and thin. And they also don't exist in like big versions. You just have the small glass for it, and that creates the crown. When you have a wide-rimmed glass like this, it's a bit harder to get a crown, because of the different yeast that it uses for the fermentation process. Flavor-wise, it is quite similar to non-German interpretations, non-German ways of brewing lagers, taste-wise. So it doesn't have that sort of roundedness that German lagers tend to have. It definitely doesn't have the punch, the bitterness punch of a Pilsner, and it's not as rounded as a Zwickel would be. It's not soft and refreshing like a pale lager. It kind of lacks all of those. It's almost in some ways more akin to like a brown ale. It has those sort of characteristics going on, but kind of mixed with some of the more savory characteristics of a. So it's not as bready as a brown ale would be, but these sort of more rounded notes remind me more of an ale, and but it's sort of mixed with these sort of more fresh, summery notes that you would get from from a pale lager, for example. What these beers tend to have, though, and this one is no exception, from the, I don't know, I haven't tried that many different Kölsch. I try one, when I'm in Cologne, which isn't very often because I don't like that city very much. But they all tend to have that sort of, I've described that a few times before. When you drink a lot of the beer, it has that sort of buildup of an alcohol-y, petroleum-esque kind of thing that builds up in the back of your throat and kind of makes it uncomfortable to drink more of it. It kind of has that, but it's similar, but it's not quite as annoying. It doesn't make you want to not drink it as much, if that makes sense. So it is there, but it's not obnoxious in a way where it stops you from enjoying the beer. It's still an enjoyable drinking experience, but it certainly sort of goes toward that direction. I will say this. I'm not the most, the biggest fan of Kölsch. Probably wouldn't get this specific one again. Just because, to me personally, it does not stand out from the ones I've tried. But if you are ever in Germany and you are somewhere in the sort of northwest, somewhere near Cologne, where you might be able to get Kölsch, I would give that a try because it is a very, very different kind of beer. It is so hard to describe because it is just a thing of its own. And I do respect it for that, because I think there are a lot of beers that are very, very similar there are a lot of different kinds of ales, and there's lots of ones that taste very, very different, but there's also some that are quite similar, and that's why I sometimes say, oh, it's ale-like, because there are some characteristics to ale that they kind of all share. In the same way that some characteristics about proper lagers are kind of shared among them all. And this kind of just stands on its own. And it's really interesting in that. And I really do appreciate it for that. It's not necessarily a beer I would get all the time to drink, but it is a very, very different experience and a fun one for that. Just because it's different. It's something to talk about, right? I mean, I've been already talking for like 8 minutes about this beer. And I could keep going because to me, this kind of thing is just really interesting. It's not particularly offensive. It's not a beer where I'm particularly amazed and like, oh, I'm gonna get this again. But it has a talking point. The closest that I can think of that I did recently, which I'm not actually sure how that's gonna work out with the uploads, but I warned you guys about that, is the Yggdrasil beer in the Beer of the Gods line, which was a red ale, and with that one, I said I couldn't really give it a proper rating because there were other things I wanted to try with it, like use it for cooking and drinking it at different beer temperatures and outside temperatures. I would love to try it in the fall, stuff like that. This is a beer that I would love to try in the spring because it is it's a strangely refreshing beer for how deep the flavors are. And that's kind of odd in a way, so I would really love to try this sort of, that first hint you get of spring after when the winter has been kind of long and kind of nagging on, and you're kind of ready for the next season, and you get that first spring sun, right, and the first flowers and all that sort of stuff. The sort of it's getting there, right? I think that would be really enjoyable to have on that kind of day. So again, I think it's hard, and I'll probably try to remember that and try to get it during that kind of time of year. But as a general drinking beer, it's enjoyable, and I would definitely, I wouldn't get it again simply because it's kind of difficult for me to get this stuff. I have to get it from the import store, which is a ways away. And when I go there, there are just kind of other things that I want to get, either beers that I haven't had yet, or beers that are from around the world that I can't get anywhere else. So I do still think that I would give this a 6 out of 10, just purely on the merit that I think it is really, really interesting to try this kind of beer because it is just so different. And also, I think there is a lot of misplaced judgment, especially in southern Germany, for this kind of beer, because this is just not something we do down here anymore. Like, top fermentation beers are practically extinct in South Germany. It's all lagers or Weissbier or Schwarzbier, stuff like that, Landbiere. But there's not really anything like a Kölsch or like an Altbier. So it's, yeah, I feel like a lot of people just dismiss it because there is a sort of category of Cologne person that is quite annoying, and they're usually very, very autistic about their Kölsch. So I feel like there's a lot of dismissal for that, but I do think you should give this a go. If you've never had a Kölsch, you should absolutely try it, because it's just a very different experience to anything you've had before. It's really hard to put into words, because in the end it is quite similar to things you've tried before. It's just kind of a sort of a middle thing between a lot of other things, which does make it its own thing. That's really the best way I can describe it. It's just a really interesting experience, and you should really try one. As far as what brand, again, all the ones I've tried were very similar, so I don't think it matters that much. I think the Gaffel one was actually quite nice. This one is also all right, so just try a Kölsch, and you know it'll be different enough because it is that different brewing method, which is just kind of unique. So yeah, that's really all I have to say about it. I hope you all have a wonderful evening and you enjoyed this video, and please join me again on another day for another beer. Cheers, lads!